As I was taking my morning walk by the beef cattle pasture a few days ago, I stopped to watch the little calves with their mother cows behind the fence. I love those mornings. They help me tame my morning cortisol levels and ease into a peaceful start. The sky was crisp blue, the sun bright but not too hot, and the morning dew still clung to the grass. I felt the coolness under my bare feet and welcomed the grounding sensation. My body liked it, and my mind understood the value of it too. That's when I noticed the first ripe blackberries on the branches leaning against the fence that separated me from the animals. I couldn't resist. I thought I'd just eat the 3 I saw in front of me, but then I spotted a few more on the next branch, and before I knew it, I'd eaten a generous handful. This was the first time I'd eaten any plant food since I started the carnivore diet, except for my coffee. I have my reasons, which I can sum up in one sentence. I believe plants can cause more harm than good, definitely more harm than most people realize. Well, nothing bad happened, at least nothing I could feel. The berries were local and picked at the peak of ripeness. I didn't feel sick, just a bit hungrier than usual afterward. By the way, if you remember, I said I hadn't committed to never drinking alcohol again. And likewise, I haven't promised to never eat plant foods again. That said, I can't imagine buying blackberries from a grocery store anytime soon. In this episode, I'll continue sharing why I became this restrictive. So if you're curious, keep listening. This is the podcast Eel Zebra's Transformations. I used to be an eel zebra. I was prey, but I committed to transforming into a lioness who lives without feeling guilty about how nature created her. Transformation involves detaching from decades of conditioning, and it requires doing things differently. So, I am podcasting to keep track of my progress. If my sharing helps someone else, I see that as a win for everyone. But now, without further ado, let's get started. In the previous episode, I talked about fructose and said it paralyzes mitochondria, causes insulin resistance, and insulin resistance reduces the ATP that can get into cells. The potential result of this is oxidative stress, which occurs when there are too many free radicals and not enough antioxidants to neutralize them. I finished the episode saying that not only do sweet potatoes contain fructose, but also oxalates. I'll start from where I left off, namely from the oxidative stress, and I'll transition into talking about oxalates. To prepare for this episode, I searched the net to see what is offered to eliminate oxidative stress. Right away, I came across an article about oxidative stress, and when I checked what the business offered, it was pain management therapy. The article said, nobody can avoid exposure to free radicals and subsequently oxidative stress, but we can reduce the effects of it because it causes pain and stiffness. They went on quoting dietitians who recommended having 5 servings of fruit and vegetables daily. They said berries, citrus fruits, broccoli, dark leafy greens, carrots, tomatoes, fish, nuts, garlic, onions, cinnamon, turmeric, and vitamins E and C will help with oxidative stress. I bet you've heard statements like this too. Yet I know that oxalate experts would strongly disagree with such claims. The information I'll share today will be heavily based on the writings of and interviews with Sally Norton, nutrition consultant, lifestyle coach, and the author of the book Toxic Superfoods. Sally would say that citrus fruits, dark leafy greens such as spinach, chard, and beet greens, carrots, tomatoes, garlic, onions, cinnamon, turmeric, vitamin C, and many nuts and berries are high in oxalates. I'll add that I wouldn't eat broccoli either, but for a different reason. I wouldn't eat it because it's a goitrogen, but I'll talk about goitrogens in a separate episode. Now, back to Sally Norton. Sally's personal story is one of the most powerful illustrations of how damaging oxalates can be over time, especially when their effects go unrecognized for decades. Looking back, she now sees that the symptoms began early. At just 5 years old, she needed her tonsils removed, something she now suspects may have been triggered by oxalate buildup. By age 12, she started experiencing joint pain and backaches, and not long after, a serious foot problem. What followed was a painful 10-year saga: surgeries, long recoveries, wheelchairs, and walking aids. Even after the surgeries, foot problems lingered well into adulthood. Throughout her 20s, she struggled with the intense fatigue, joint inflammation, and signs of autoimmune dysfunction. And yet, she had always prided herself on following a healthy diet. As a child, she loved the rhubarb desserts her mother made, a seemingly wholesome treat, but one that's actually extremely high in oxalates. She and her sister even played with rhubarb plants and fed them to each other as a game. Sally now believes childhood exposure to oxalates may play a role in development challenges. Based on her experience and the stories of her clients, she points out that symptoms like fussiness in babies, cradle cap, frequent ear infections, learning difficulties, and even behavioral issues might all be signs of neurotoxicity caused by oxalates. These sharp reflective compounds can disrupt electrolytes, damage cell membranes, and interfere with the nervous system. Many of the people Sally works with today, people who feel like their health has been crumbling for years, can trace their symptoms back to childhood. In some cases, it started with high oxalate foods. In others, it was antibiotics or gut imbalances that made them more vulnerable to oxalate toxicity. Whatever the starting point, the pattern is the same: unexplained symptoms worsening over time, and no clear answers until someone finally connects the dots. I too was raised to believe that fruits and vegetables were good for me. So when I started developing allergies to them, I felt confused and doomed. Carrots, green peas, and celery were the first to cause reactions. Then came fresh potatoes. I remember getting blisters on my hands while helping in the school kitchen, where I had to remove the eyes from raw potatoes. Cooked, they didn't bother me. The same went for carrots and nuts. I could only tolerate them thermally processed. If I ate them raw, my throat would itch and start to close up. Still, I kept eating fruits and vegetables, just choosing the ones that didn't trigger symptoms. But over time, the list of quote-unquote safe ones kept shrinking. From my late 30s to late 40s, I struggled with headaches that gradually evolved into full-blown migraines. At one point, I was prescribed oxycodone. I knew it was addictive, so I used it only a few times before asking my doctor for a different solution. He prescribed antidepressants instead. When I look back, I realize my shoulder pain began about 8 years ago. I blamed it on yoga. A new teacher explained that female shoulders are particularly vulnerable to injury. Therefore, she didn't teach chaturanga like other instructors did. But my shoulder already hurt by then, and I assumed it was damage from the previous teacher's style. The pain never went away. I was convinced I had a torn rotator cuff. Then came September 30th, 2020, a date I won't forget. That evening, my right wrist suddenly began to ache and swell. The pain was so intense that I took one of the leftover oxycodone pills I had saved from my migraine days. I even wondered if I'd been bitten by a black widow or brown recluse, but I saw no sign of a bite. The next day, I ended up in the emergency room. The diagnosis was gout. My then husband almost laughed. He said that gout was for lavish people who ate too much red meat, aged cheese, and drank red wine, none of which were part of my quote-unquote healthy diet. By 2021, my aches and pains had multiplied. My back pain became so severe that I was nearly disabled. Sitting for more than a few minutes was difficult, and lying down didn't help. By the end of that year, my doctor ordered blood tests to check for autoimmune markers. The results came back positive. The year 2022 turned out to be one of the most difficult periods of my life, not just physically but emotionally too. I was in constant pain and also navigating a volatile and violent family situation. It was my new rock bottom. Do you have aches, pains, gout, kidney stones, or other symptoms that are getting worse instead of better? Are you eating and living well but confused because you still feel lousy? Sally asks on her website's homepage and continues. You might have something you've never heard of, oxalate poisoning. Ironically, it could be your quote-unquote healthy diet that is making you sick. In fact, most doctors are unaware of this problem and are unable to help you discover and manage it. So what are oxalates? Oxalates, also known as oxalic acid and oxalate salts, are small, highly reactive compounds made by plants and to a lesser extent by the human body. They're found in many plant-based foods, including vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, and even tea and chocolate. At a chemical level, oxalic acid is a simple molecule made of 2 carbon atoms and 4 oxygen atoms. Because of its structure, it carries a negative charge that attracts positively charged minerals like calcium, magnesium, and iron. When oxalate binds to these minerals, it forms oxalate salts, sharp crystals, which are difficult for the body to dissolve or eliminate. These oxalate salts can stay in the bloodstream or get deposited in tissues throughout the body. Oxalates are considered end products of metabolism, which means the only way to get rid of them is to excrete them through urine or feces, assuming the body can even move them out effectively. While small amounts of oxalates are normal and manageable, problems arise when too many oxalates are consumed or when the body is unable to clear them out efficiently. The oxalates absorbed from food or generated by excessive vitamin C intake can contribute to a buildup over time. This can lead to inflammation, cellular stress, and mineral imbalances. Oxalates are naturally occurring compounds found in many foods, including those often labeled as superfoods, such as spinach, beets, nuts, chia seeds, quinoa, chocolate, and tea. While oxalates are also made in small amounts inside the body, most of oxalate load comes from diet and certain supplements, especially high-dose vitamin C. The problem with the oxalates is that the body can clear just so much of them at a time, and if you continue to intake oxalates, your body will stash them away. Over time, such accumulation of oxalates can lead to a variety of problems, including chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, cell and tissue damage, weakened immune function, mitochondrial dysfunction, insulin resistance, pain and stiffness in connective tissues, such as frozen shoulder and arthritis, and more. Many people are unaware of oxalates and how these crystals might be quietly building up in their system. Symptoms often appear gradually and may not clearly point to oxalate overload, making diagnosis difficult. Green smoothies, which often contain high oxalate ingredients such as spinach and almond flour, are one of common examples of overexposure. In one study, participants who drank a spinach-based smoothie showed signs of immune cell damage within just 40 minutes. This kind of damage can weaken the body's defenses and increase vulnerability to infections. When asked how much of oxalates the human body can handle, Sally answers that it varies from person to person, but there is a fatality metric in toxicology which measures how much it takes to kill a person, and that range is huge, anywhere from 3 to 15 grams. So somebody could die even after drinking 3 spinach smoothies, while it would take 15 spinach smoothies to kill someone else. When asked if there was one product she would recommend anyone to remove from their diet, Sally's answer comes without hesitation: almonds. Our immune system reacts to oxalate crystals by trying to neutralize them, sometimes forming clumps around the crystals or releasing DNA to trap them. Over time, this repeated response can overstimulate the immune system and may contribute to autoimmune conditions. Oxalate accumulation can potentially contribute to prostate problems, particularly by forming calcium oxalate stones within the prostate glands in men. These stones, often found in men with prostatitis, can lead to inflammation and potentially worsen symptoms. Oxalate accumulation is also proposed to potentially contribute to uterine fibroid development in women. Oxalates, when they accumulate in the body, can cause inflammation and irritation in various tissues, including the uterus, potentially contributing to the growth of fibroids. Additionally, oxalate buildup can lead to hormonal imbalances, which are also implicated in fibroid development. Moreover, oxalates don't just affect the joints, gut, and skin or sex organs. They can also impact the brain. This aspect, however, isn't widely discussed, and scientific research on the neurological effects of oxalates is still limited. Yet there are signs pointing to a strong connection between oxalates and various forms of neurodegeneration. Some researchers have found oxalate crystals in brain regions associated with Parkinson's disease. There's growing speculation that oxalates may also play a role in dementia. When looking at how oxalates affect the nervous system on a basic mechanistic level, the evidence suggests they can contribute to neurotoxicity. That means oxalates may not only promote cognitive decline but also influence emotional and psychological well-being. As you know, this is my topic of concern. Many people who've removed oxalates from their diets report significant emotional improvements. Symptoms like anxiety, panic attacks, depression, and general emotional heaviness have noticeably lessened or even disappeared for some. The connection between oxalate buildup and mood disorders is becoming more apparent through these real-life accounts. However, transitioning to a low oxalate diet isn't always easy. As the body begins to clear oxalates, some people experience temporary side effects such as fatigue, headaches, and nausea. These symptoms are common in the early phase and usually improve with time. Supportive steps like increasing electrolyte intake through mineral-rich foods, salt, or supplements can help ease the adjustment. A common question people ask is whether jumping into a strict carnivore diet for 90 days is a good way to start clearing oxalates from the body. The answer Not always. While some people transition to a carnivore diet without issue, for many it is a dramatic shift, especially if they've eaten high oxalate foods before. Going to regular oxalate exposure to none at all can shock the system. The body has been quietly handling too much oxalate. It stores crystals in the places like the thyroid, joints, and bones. Now it suddenly notices that no new oxalate is coming in. That's when something called oxalate dumping can begin. Tissues start releasing their hidden stores of oxalates back into the bloodstream, which can trigger all kinds of symptoms. Rashes, joint pain, brain fog, cloudy urine, crystals coming out of eyes and ears, sleepless nights, and more. And there's the thing. This oxalate dumping doesn't follow a schedule. Some people feel it in the first few weeks of dietary change. Others might not experience it for months or even years. There are reports of people on a carnivore diet for 6 years who only recently began to show signs of oxalate clearing. The variability is enormous, and modern science still hasn't caught up. Oxalate accumulation is hard to detect and is under-researched in mainstream medicine. That's why many oxalate experts suggest taking a gradual approach. Instead of cutting all oxalates overnight, begin by removing the most concentrated offenders: almonds, buckwheat, spinach, quinoa, one at a time. Sally says, think of it like trying to not wake a sleeping baby. You want to sneak out of the room gently, not slam the door and cause a meltdown. I thought I had done that, taken it slow. I didn't go from green smoothies to steak overnight. But now, about 6 months into eating this way, I'm starting to wonder if it was still too fast for my body. Those first few months, I felt amazing. But lately, some odd symptoms have crept in. Things that make me wonder if I'm expecting oxalate dumping after all. It's hard to know for sure, but I've read enough to suspect that's what it might be. That morning by the pasture, when I found the ripe blackberries, I didn't lose control or give in. It was an intentional decision. I know that blackberries have relatively high oxalate levels. I was thinking, maybe some oxalate intake is needed to calm what I thought was the beginning of an oxalate storm. I haven't decided to reintroduce plants on a regular basis, but I'm now considering whether adding back a small amount of oxalates, like a cup of tea in the afternoons, would help me manage this better. And then I'll be, in a way, like a British royal. Just don't expect me to eat bread or scones. I'll talk more about what I'm experimenting with and what I've learned about supplements in the future episodes. For now, I just wanted to be honest that this isn't a straight line. Even a strict approach like a carnivore can have unexpected twists. I'm learning to pay attention. You've been listening to the podcast of LZB. If you like what you hear, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, followed, liked, commented, and shared. If you want to learn more about me, my causes, my products, and my services, please visit my website, ilzeb.com. That's ILZEB.com. Disclaimers. In this podcast, I talk about mental and physical health and what has helped me to heal. Nothing that I say should be regarded as medical advice. If you have any medical condition, consult your doctor. Also, I'm an artist and storyteller. I'm sharing my stories because that's what artistic people do. Take it as fiction and as a form of my art. Even though I may sound as if I'm recalling events from my past, I don't confirm they actually happened. And if they did, I'm not blaming or accusing anyone, nor should you. I take all my life lessons with gratitude, trusting that they are given to me to expand my soul.